I wasn't planning to touch 3I/Atlas today, but just as controversy over its sunward jet was cooling off, a sudden new tail appeared, and then something stranger emerged. Rumors the object is actually changing course. If true, it would mean a million-kilometer deviation, far beyond what comet outgassing can explain, raising urgent questions for planetary defense. But can odd comet morphology really fool the world's orbit calculations, or is there something we're missing? Let's break down what's really happening. In early summer 2025, telescopes across both hemispheres locked onto 3I/Atlas, expecting a classic comet tail trailing away from the sun. Instead, they recorded something almost never seen. A sharp, persistent jet streaming directly toward the sun. A textbook anti-tail. This sunward feature dominated images from June through August, confirmed by the Keck Observatory's precise spectroscopic mapping, Hubble's high-resolution snapshots, and a steady stream of amateur photographs. The anti-tail's axis, measured at just over 102 degrees east of north, lined up almost perfectly with the Sun-comet direction, while surface brightness profiles from Keck's IFU data showed a concentrated streak of nickel-rich material, more compact than the typical cyanogen haze. For weeks, the anti-tail remained stable, its structure visible even through the broadening coma, as 3I/Atlas closed in on perihelion. Then, in mid-September, the scene changed in less than 2 days. Between September 14th and 15th, observatories from the Gran Telescopio Canarias to the Nordic Optical Telescope logged a rapid fade in the sunward jet, replaced by a more familiar, broad dust tail pointing directly away from the sun. This transition, caught in a tight 36-hour window, was so abrupt that some teams double-checked their data for errors. Yet every major instrument confirmed the same story. The anti-tail vanished, the standard anti-solar tail took over. High-cadence imaging pinned down the timing. By September 15th, the sunward jet was gone from both professional and amateur frames, replaced by a classical tail stretching out along the predicted solar wind direction. The switch wasn't just cosmetic. Surface brightness profiles, tail axis measurements, and coma asymmetry all shifted in lockstep. Such a rapid morphological turnaround is almost unheard of in comet science, especially for an interstellar object with a nucleus this large. The rarity of this event, tracked by multiple independent teams, set off a scramble for physical explanations, and for many, raised new questions about what forces could drive such a dramatic transformation. Pinpointing the position of 3I/Atlas isn't as simple as drawing a dot on the sky. Every measurement depends on finding the object's photocenter, the weighted center of its brightness in an image. But comets, especially ones as active as 3I/Atlas, don't play fair. Their comas and tails skew that center, sometimes by as much as half an arc-second, occasionally more. During the anti-tail phase, when the sunward jet was at its brightest, surface brightness profiles from Keck's IFU data and Hubble imaging showed the photocenter drifting along the jet's axis. Simulations and direct measurements pegged the bias at up to 0.5 to 1 arc-second, depending on the telescope's resolution and the aperture used for centroiding. This isn't a minor technicality. At 2.4 astronomical units from Earth, a displacement of even 0.5 arcseconds translates to nearly 900 kilometers in projected position. If orbit calculations don't account for this, the resulting trajectory can appear to veer off course, especially when comparing data from different observatories or reduction pipelines. The effect intensifies during periods of asymmetric activity, like the rapid anti-tail fade in September, when the comet's light distribution changes almost overnight. Astrometric campaigns rely on consistent, UN-biased centroiding to refine orbital solutions. But with 3I/Atlas, the evolving coma and tail structure introduce a moving target. Standard centroiding algorithms, which often assume a point source or simple Gaussian profile, can't fully correct for the shifting brightness. That's why high-precision campaigns now demand multi-aperture centroiding, detailed surface brightness modeling, and cross-verification with simulated coma shapes. The vulnerability is clear. Even with the best equipment, subtle morphological changes can nudge orbit fits just enough to mimic a real course deviation. For 3I/Atlas, The line between measurement artifact and genuine anomaly is razor thin, and every arc second matters. Avi Loeb, known for his willingness to challenge consensus, took an early interest in 3/ATLAS. Before the September tail transition, Loeb had rated the object a 4 on his own anomaly scale, a category reserved for cases where natural explanations seem unlikely and engineered origins must be considered. But with the sudden appearance of a conventional tail, Loeb's assessment changed. He downgraded 3I/ATLAS to a 2, grouping it with comets that are unusual but still plausibly natural. This wasn't a quiet revision. In project notes and interviews, Loeb outlined an informal checklist of 8 features that, taken together, keep 3I/ATLAS on his radar: the object's entry along the ecliptic plane, the persistent sunward jet before perihelion, a nucleus mass far larger than either Oumuamua or Borisov, unusually high nickel compared to iron in spectroscopic signatures, a delayed water outburst with less than 4% H2O measured before perihelion, extreme negative polarization in the coma dust, planetary encounters that seem almost too well timed for optimal observation, and an approach direction that passes close to the historic WOW signal coordinates. Loeb's team cautions that no single anomaly is enough to justify extraordinary claims. But the cluster of oddities, especially when combined with the object's mass and chemical profile, calls for precise, coordinated tracking. For Loeb, the new tail doesn't erase the checklist. It sharpens the need for robust, multi-site astrometry and compositional follow-up, keeping the object under close scientific scrutiny as it moves through the inner solar system. The International Asteroid Warning Network set a firm window for its 3I/ATLAS campaign, November 27, 2025 through January 27, 2026. Registration closes on November 7th, with every participant required to complete a virtual orientation workshop before submitting data. The aim is unambiguous: improve the precision of comet centroiding and deliver a global, high-cadence astrometric dataset sensitive enough to flag even the smallest deviations in 3I/ATLAS's orbit. Coordinators from JPL, the Minor Planet Center, and several national observatories shape the campaign's protocols. All contributors, whether operating major research telescopes or backyard setups, must submit astrometry in the standardized ADES format. Each entry is expected to include exact timestamps, observer codes, and full calibration logs, along with the raw FITS images and supporting bias, dark, and flat frames for validation. Data uploads must reach the campaign portal within 36 hours of collection. Observers are also asked to maintain morphology logs, recording tail orientation, coma diameter, and any unusual activity, outbursts, fragmentation, or abrupt changes in jet structure. These requirements go beyond previous comet campaigns, reflecting the need for sub-arc second accuracy and full traceability. The campaign structure is designed for redundancy, hundreds of telescopes distributed across continents, each providing independent measurements with automated cross-checks against the latest JPL orbit solutions. This approach maximizes the chance of catching any subtle, real-time trajectory anomaly. For the first time, even amateur stations are held to the same rigorous standards as the professionals, making their data a critical part of the global effort. Hundreds of telescopes, from backyard rigs to national observatories, now form the backbone of the 3I/ATLAS campaign. Each participant, whether running a research-grade CCD or a modest DSLR, is expected to follow the same rigorous protocols set out by the campaign's coordinators. Astrometric data must be submitted in the ADES format, which means every measurement carries a full set of metadata, precise timestamps, observer codes, instrument details, and calibration logs. FITS images, along with supporting dark, bias, and flat frames, are required for validation. This level of detail isn't just bureaucracy, it's what allows orbit refinements to reach the sub-arc. Second accuracy needed to spot any real course deviation. Observers are also tasked with keeping morphology logs. These daily records capture tail orientation, coma diameter, and any sudden changes in jet structure or activity. During the weeks when 3I/Atlas slipped behind the Sun from Earth's perspective, Mars-orbiting spacecraft were in a perfect position to capture images no ground-based telescope could match. The geometry was ideal. At closest approach, the comet passed within a few degrees of Mars's sky, offering a vantage point for direct nucleus measurements and detailed mapping of any jets or dust structures. Yet, as the comet's tail transformed and global campaigns ramped up, the highest resolution images from Mars remained conspicuously absent from public archives. According to internal sources at NASA and JPL, these datasets were flagged for restricted review by the Planetary Defense Coordination Office. Official justifications cite international sensitivities and dual-use technology concerns, but the scientific community is unconvinced. Planetary scientists and European instrument leads have called for immediate release, arguing that timely access is critical for constraining nucleus size, shape, and activity, especially with morphological changes underway. The withholding has fueled frustration among ground-based observers who rely on these images to validate and refine their own measurements. While security and attribution reviews are standard for sensitive space assets, the silence from data stewards has left many questioning whether scientific priorities are being sidelined at a moment when transparency is most needed. On October 25th, a post appeared on Medium from an independent group known for tracking solar system anomalies. The report laid out a startling claim. Astrometric data from multiple amateur observatories, combined and time-stamped, pointed to a right ascension and declination offset in the position of 3I/Atlas. According to their calculations, the comet's photocenter had drifted by nearly 1.1 million kilometers from the predicted JPL ephemeris, an apparent lateral displacement measured at roughly 2.38 astronomical units from Earth. The numbers implied a sudden sideways velocity of about 4 kilometers per second, a figure that stands out for a body this massive. The authors published their code, reduction logs, and a table of raw positions, citing open-source pipelines and referencing Gaia star catalogs for calibration. Their methodology leaned heavily on distributed ADES format submissions, with each entry cross-referenced by observatory code and UTC timestamp. They argued that the offset could not be explained by ordinary centroiding errors or catalog mismatches alone, and that the timing, just after the comet's tail transformation and during solar conjunction, demanded urgent attention. The post spread quickly through astronomy forums, sparking debates about data integrity and the physical plausibility of such a dramatic course change. For the first time, the possibility of a real trajectory anomaly for an interstellar object moved from backroom speculation to public alarm. Experienced comet observers know that extraordinary claims demand careful scrutiny. Before jumping to conclusions about a million-kilometer course change, the community is methodically working through the most likely sources of error. Astrometry on active comets is notoriously tricky. Centroid measurements can be thrown off by evolving jets, asymmetric comas, or even subtle changes in the tail's brightness. When the photocenter drifts by as little as half an arcsecond, that alone can mimic a dramatic position shift at the distances involved. Data reduction pipelines, especially those relying on default settings or mismatched reference catalogs, can introduce further bias. Version mismatches between JPL orbit solutions and submitted observations sometimes create apparent residuals that vanish with proper ephemeris alignment. Light time corrections, if neglected during periods of rapid orbital updates, can also skew the apparent position by hundreds of kilometers. Most telling, earlier in 3I/Atlas's inbound leg, non-gravitational accelerations were almost negligible, despite vigorous outgassing. That history stands in stark contrast to the sudden, large velocity implied by the current claim. For many in the field, the burden of proof now rests on showing that every mundane explanation, centroid drift, catalog or timing errors, and reduction artifacts, has been ruled out before accepting a true trajectory anomaly. As 3I/Atlas comes back into view in early November, every observer faces a precise checklist. The first priority is time-synchronized imaging. Network clocks must be checked against GPS or NTP before each session, with observation times logged in UTC to the nearest hundredth of a second. Astrometric data must be recorded and submitted in the ADES format, including telescope code, observer name, instrument details, and the full set of calibration frames, bias, dark, and flat, collected for every session. Each FITS image needs annotated metadata, exposure time, filter, seeing conditions, and the reference star catalog used for the astrometric solution, preferably Gaia DR3. Centroiding should be handled with PSF or Gaussian fitting, not simple aperture photometry, and all reduction steps must be documented in the submission manifest. Morphology logs are required daily with measurements of tail orientation, coma diameter, and any sudden changes in jet structure. Annotated images should show celestial north, solar direction, and reference stars. All data must reach the campaign portal within 36 hours of acquisition to keep the global dataset current and actionable. A sudden, unverified course change in an object as massive as 3I/ATLAS would carry consequences far beyond academic debate. Planetary defense teams at the Minor Planet Center and JPL are watching every new submission, alert for any pattern that crosses from measurement artifact into genuine risk. The campaign's rigor isn't just about science, it's about vigilance. Every disciplined observation, every standardized log, and every prompt upload helps close the gaps that could hide a real deviation. If a maneuver or sharp turn were confirmed, 3I/ATLAS would move from curiosity to global concern, and the world's best defense would be the clarity and speed of this network's data. For now, the call is simple: keep observing, keep reporting, and keep the scrutiny high. Like the tagline says, stay angry about space. That's how real answers and real safety are built. Between June and August 2025, observatories worldwide recorded 3/ATLAS's unusual sunward jet, a rare anti-tail, followed by a rapid transition to a conventional tail in mid-September. This shift, verified by multiple instruments, raised concerns about measurement bias and the accuracy of orbital predictions. In response, the International Asteroid Warning Network launched a global campaign from November 27, 2025 to January 27, 2026, calling on both professionals and amateurs to gather precise astrometry and morphology data. Yet, as of today, high-resolution Mars orbiter images remain unreleased, and a widely cited Medium post alleges a lateral course deviation of 1.1 million kilometers, a claim not yet confirmed by official sources. The cause, whether data artifact, non-gravitational force, or observational error, remains unresolved. What is clear? Only coordinated, transparent observations in the upcoming watch window can test these claims. Until then, 3I/ATLAS stands as both a scientific puzzle and a test of the astronomical community's vigilance.